Hello and welcome to the Cyber Weekly. The Cyber Weekly is heading towards reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so be sure to subscribe. Today we welcome Jacob. Jacob, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself and who is Jacob?
Yeah, I'm Dr.
Actually,
Jake Benjamin. Go ahead.
that's what I was about to say. I forgot your title. It's Doctor.
Oh, that's okay. It's not a problem. No,
Okay.
I'm Dr. Jacob Benjamin. I'm the consulting director for Dragos. So I oversee our cybersecurity assessments that we do for consulting across critical infrastructure worldwide. So we have um, so critical infrastructure is going to be things like power plants, oil and gas pipelines, manufacturing facilities, all of those kinds of things, right? And so I oversee from a technical perspective the scope of OT cybersecurity at those facilities across the world. So even just last year alone, I went to 6 of the 7 continents and did active service engagements on them. Did not go to Antarctica yet. It's on my list, but we went through all the other every other continent and did service engagements across them all. And so yeah, we're all about safeguarding civilization, so protecting that critical infrastructure, regardless of where it's at throughout the globe.
Yes, many people don't know, but Dr. Jacob Benjamin is one of the people who have actually worked in terms of ICS. People actually don't know what ICS is, which is Industrial Control Systems, and they are systems which work in power plants. We work in manufacturing, and also we work in nuclear. So those are very, very technical places, and if you don't do a very good job, the whole world will know. So yes, that is his area of specialty. So industry systems are his area of specialty, and how to ensure that security is maintained. So, why that career path?
Well, early on when I was going to university, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do engineering or if I wanted to do computer science. And ultimately, I ended up doing computer science, but then found myself in engineering and the convergence of computer science and engineering anyway. So I guess ultimately I didn't need to make that decision. The world and how we have the convergence of technology made that for me. And so really interesting is, early on I wanted to be a web developer, and then I got an internship doing forensics, and like security and forensics, just I really gravitated towards it. I found it really interesting. And so I started doing that. And then I was overseeing some interns, and they started to work for a critical infrastructure company, electric company, and I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And so then I went and applied for a nuclear power plant position doing OT cybersecurity. They agreed. They said, "Hey, we'll teach you all of the engineering stuff you need to know. You teach us the forensics aspects, and it'll be a good, mixture." And so I did that, and I haven't looked. I mean, that was 15 years ago, and ever since then, I've been doing um, OT specific cybersecurity across, whether it's nuclear or electric, or, I've done a variety of now, but for the most part, my experience is in that nuclear generation space. But these tools and these technologies across the sectors are very similar. So programmable logic controllers like PLCs and remote terminal units, RTUs, these things that, they're very common across a variety of industries, whether it's the electric sector or oil and gas and things like that. So it's easy to go across.
Yes, just a quick recap. There's this OT I've been speaking about. What is it?
So again, OT is physics, right? And so a lot of people think, they think IT and computers, but we have our things that we have in the world like giant. You can think of almost like giant spinning things, right? Giant, whether it's a turbine generating power or it's a water desalination plant providing clean water for everyone to drink. Uh, these complex industrial processes require technology to control and to automate them and to help with maintenance and things like that. And so they use oftentimes a different type of computer, right? Not normally like a Windows machine or a server or things like that. Although oftentimes it's becoming more common. We're seeing, but traditionally these are things like programmable logic controllers, distributed control systems or, SCADA and things like that you'll see across these networks. But ultimately, what we're doing is we're controlling a physical process. Like as I said, whether it's spinning turbines and generating, putting electrons onto the grid, or if it's going through and purifying water, or natural gas through pipelines and things like that, and delivering them from several places down to individual consumers and things like that. So but you can think of operational technology as like the industrial world and things that you need for your everyday life, whether it's power, water, lights, food, clothing, all of those things. There's a level of automation that's put in place now throughout the last 30, 40 years. And so we need to protect that from a security standpoint.
Okay. So, based on your tabletop exercise, which you made through Dragos, your current employer, you found that 92% of organizations struggle with detection during incident response. Please share more on that.
Oh, yes, of course. So for those that don't know, a tabletop exercise is a activity that is rooted in emergency preparedness and cybersecurity, right? And so we're analyzing a hypothetical scenario and discussing how we would respond to that event. So it's one of the really common scenarios that you would think would be like ransomware within my environment. So I'm going to get together with the people that operate this facility, and we are going to uh, pretend like a ransomware event has happened slowly. We'll kind of have what we call injects, where we have little pieces of time over and over, and we walk through our incident response plan, and we're basically testing it out and looking to see if our logic is sound, if we've documented everything the right way, things like that. We're testing out our incident response plan, because the worst time to test your incident response plan is during an incident, right? So you want to have that already done. You want everyone already practiced and everything like that. So that's the point of a tabletop exercise. And there's lots of these scenarios out there, like whether it's ransomware or OT specific malware or supply chain compromises. There's a bunch of them. Ransomware being the most common. But how Dragos does this is we evaluate your core incident response capabilities. And there's 7 of those, and one of the main ones there is the ability to detect things, and that's where we had this 92% struggled with detecting during incident response. It's incredibly difficult from an operational standpoint to detect whether something is a process anomaly or it's a cyber event. It's a very nuanced thing early on in before you get what we refer to as like left of boom, before something bad really happens, where you get the ransomware screen that says, "Hey, we're taking over your computer," or before something bad, like something, you know, uh, before there's a physical impact, something breaks or something like that, right? Ideally, we want to detect things before that, and oftentimes there's signs of those things happening, but it can be really difficult to tell if there's something wrong with our process, like normal deviations, or if there's some kind of cyber event happening. And it's something that has been researched very heavily over the last 20 years or more, especially at Idaho National Laboratory, one of my previous employees. We researched this really honing in on how to tell the difference between when something is cyber and when something is process anomaly. It's very difficult. But so this is one area that everyone struggles in, and that's one of the key points there, is just making sure that we have the visibility in the data to make that determination, right? So that might be things like having logs, having network traffic, live network traffic that you can analyze and go through, those kinds of things. So it's very common in a lot of these environments to not have network traffic analyzed south of the firewall, or to not have logs for more than a few hours and things like that, or the logs are they're only on the devices, they're not centralized. You have to pull them manually. And so it's very difficult to do this root cause analysis to determine what happened in my event. And so the earlier you can detect something, before there's a bad event, the better, right? And so making sure that we have the right sources of information to do this root cause analysis, working with the engineers and the operators. So that's kind of an overall answer to that question.
Okay. Yeah. Now, in terms of the critical infrastructure, um, how do you have to have, what is the particular architecture which you should set up in order to ensure that we have a very good defensive architecture for the organization?
That's a great question. And so, uh, one of the things that we believe in, we follow the SANS 5 critical controls for ICS. It's one of it there it's simplistic, it's easy to talk to, and it has like really good outcomes for OT cybersecurity. And the number 2 control there is having a defensible architecture. And you'll notice I didn't say the word secure architecture because it's very difficult to prove whether something is secure or insecure, or maybe it's secure today, but it's insecure tomorrow. Um, and so having a defensible architecture is really what our goal should be. And what that means is that it's an architecture that we can hunker down and use it to help us defend ourselves. So the network, it should be designed in a way that it's helping us and that we and as we defend it. It's not um, and so there's criteria there, right? So I want my architecture to be segmented from the internet. So, whether it's, firewalls or data diodes, no direct connections to the internet. Ideally, I've got it hardened with some, whether it's like a sys benchmarking or something like that. I've got some basic hardening done on these devices so they're not just honeypots, with all these vulnerabilities out there. So I've got them hardened, I've got them segmented. Hopefully, I know what's on my network, so I've got an asset inventory. I understand what I'm trying to defend, um, and then of course I want to be able to monitor and know what's happening on my network so that I can answer those questions about detection. But also, really, a key piece there is that knowledge of the interdependencies of my network. Much of this operational technology and critical infrastructure are what we call systems of systems, and they get very complex very quickly. And so, if you need to understand what if I turn off this aspect of the system, what is the downstream impact to the rest of my system? What consequences am I causing or not causing based on those things? And so I have to understand it. So I have to do like a crown jewel analysis or a consequence analysis of those systems. And so that way I understand what's happening. And then of course having the ability to kind of get into that heightened scenario where I'm protecting my environment. So that might be something like disconnecting all remote connections and things like that, like maybe just temporarily, right? So just being able to have that ability. So that's something that is not easy for a lot of corporations nowadays to, if I said, okay, we need to disconnect everything from remote access, local control only. There are many organizations that could not do that within a reasonable time frame, which it would be very important for a scenario with rapid propagation like ransomware. You'd want to quickly be able to disconnect. So again, defensible architecture is again an architecture that works for you. It's designed in such a way that it's helping you. It's not getting in the way.
Yeah, that is true. Now when it comes to visibility and monitoring, how does it greatly? How do we actually help improve that part of detection? Because there's no way of detecting easily if you don't have a good way of monitoring what is going on.
Yeah, the building block for visibility and monitoring is really just that first asset inventory, knowing what you have, protecting what you have to know what you have to protect it, right? But then also just making sure we have coverage. Visibility and monitoring is incredibly important because it allows us to know the scope of our problem. For a long time, OT didn't have visibility and monitoring in in those network segments. They only had them in the IT networks, and so you know, people would say things like, "Well, there's no attacks happening," or this isn't happening." It's like, we don't know that because we're not looking, right? And so you have a cognitive bias of if you're not looking at that data, if you have no data to support that, then you can't understand what's happening there. So it's really important just to understand what the problems and challenges are. Visibility and monitoring is great for that, not just for security, but for like a resiliency aspect of your network overall. But overall, like visibility and monitoring has gotten better over the last 5 to 10 years, and some of that is from regulation within the space, whether it's NERC in the U.S. or OTCC in Saudi Arabia or NIS2 in the European Union or the SOHI laws in Australia. So there's lots of regulation that is helping improve some of these things, but and then some of it is just the increased frequency of attacks and the awareness at the board levels and C-suite levels where they're going, yeah, we need to have visibility monitoring. We need to understand what's happening here. And so I think it's a mixture of the two.
Yeah. You hinted at remote access and ensuring that you can easily connect to the networks, but the problem is also the security of it all. How do you set up one which is actually secure and remote? Someone can access the network.
Secure remote access is very challenging, and having access remotely is essential for many organizations. Mostly my main line of work, nuclear, there's not going to be any new remote access. It's against the regulation, it's against safety kind of protocols. But for other critical infrastructures, what I have experience, you need remote access. Like uh, there's lots of geographically dispersed oil wells and things like that. You physically couldn't be at all of these different places. And so this is the rare time where an IT control, multi-factor authentication, is easy to apply here to OT. I think that usually there was a big mistake where everyone was trying to take IT security controls and force them on OT, and that doesn't work for the most part. But this is the rare occurrence where this one is true. It's okay to implement MFA, and then where you cannot implement MFA, perhaps put some extended visibility and monitoring in place. But and then when you have secure remote access, I would make sure we limit it to just authorized ones, right? There was lots of threat hunts we did in the last several years where we've identified a single organization might have 5 to 10 different remote access solutions with their environment. That's a lot, and that's hard to keep track of what's authorized, what's not, and things like that. And so making sure we limit it to just what's needed. I would suggest things like making sure we're logging sessions, recording sessions that are remote, you know, things like, the ability to turn them off, or I actually my most preferred one is that, remote sessions are on demand, and they require somebody, like, at the operator level or something to hit approve and allow that remote session in. So I would not have a constant remote connection always on, things like that. I think that's too high of a risk. So I would focus on that. And then yeah, so recording those sessions, documenting them, the ability to disconnect, and then, of course, just make sure you're curating every so often. Like, do I still need this remote access connection?
Okay. How do you set up a good risk-based vulnerability management program?
Well, to understand your risk, you have to know what's happening, right? You have to look at what the threat landscape is for your environment. And so you'd have to subscribe to some threat intelligence feeds and things like that. There's lots of freely available ones. There's lots of webinars. There's lots of things like that. So the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency for the United States puts out a lot of things, threat intelligence. Dragos, my company, puts out we put out ICS specific threat intelligence. So it's going to be specific to critical infrastructure. There are other feeds like, from Mandiant and from Microsoft and things like that. So just making sure you're kind of what's happening in the threat landscape. And there's great free webinars out there from Dragos, from the SANS Institute, from others where we're talking about the threat landscape. And I would encourage you to pick one specific to your industry. So if you're working in oil and gas, look to see what's different about the oil and gas threat landscape versus the electric sector or versus manufacturing or shipping and logistics, right? So having that understanding of what risk is actually that I'm facing. So I need that threat informed approach. And then kind of going through and making sure you have to know what systems you have, right? Because, just last year alone, there were a little over 2,000 OT specific vulnerabilities, but only like 2 to 4% of them were ones that we needed to critically patch. And so you can get rid of all the 96 other percent you probably didn't have to do anything for. And even the ones that you have to make sure, well, do I have those systems where those could be exploited? So matching up your asset vulnerability program against the threat intel feed and making sure like, okay, these are the assets I have. This is a vulnerability for that asset. Is it ranked as a now, next, never? Is this something that I have to do immediately? Is this something I could do within the next 6 months or like an outage? Or is this something that I probably don't ever have to really do anything, like a never vulnerability? And so kind of going through that nice approach of like now, next, never, and understanding that. And then there's alternate mitigations. The answer might not be patch. The answer might be just quickly apply a firewall rule or some other kind of alternate mitigation. It doesn't always have to be patch.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when it comes to frameworks, you've actually did a paper with the UK about ONR, Office of Nuclear Regulation. I think it is the company under the UK which is supposed to do that. I don't know.
Oh, I can elaborate on it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can elaborate on that. But the idea is emerging threats in combination with uh, the current threats we are having. How do we create a proper framework? Do we use what the regulators are having, or we come up with something which is still basing on what we have in-house?
That's a very good question. And so, yeah, I put out an emerging threats paper with the Office for Nuclear Regulation in the UK. They are the United Kingdom's regulator for nuclear energy for the civil nuclear sector. And we looked at like the next 3 years or so and kind of evaluated which threats we expected the civil nuclear industry to face, and then some recommendations for how they could face them. The paper itself is meant to be a discussion point. It's not meant to like say, "Hey, everyone, go do X, Y, Z" or things like that. As far as a framework, I really am a big fan of the 5 protocol controls because they're simple. They're not simple to implement, but they're simple to understand and simple to kind of point to as your guiding compass or North Star, as you will, right? And so, I like to point with that, and I think the regulation will follow. So if you can accurately answer the 5 critical controls for your environment, you should be able to very easily map that to any regulatory framework, whether it's NIST CSF 62443, NERC CIP, whatever your regulatory specific one is. Almost all of them are based on NIST 800 standards. So there's already an existing mapping between many of these. But if you're doing those 5 controls really well, you'll be able to easily map them through. And those 5 controls are having an OT incident response plan, having a defensible architecture, having OT visibility and monitoring, having secure remote access, and having a risk-based vulnerability management program. So if you can do those 5 things, it's very easy to map it to whatever regulation you have, whether it's oil and gas manufacturing, electric, or anything that you might be doing.
Okay. Now, if we are diving into ICS as a career path, what certifications do you hope for someone to help grow their career in that line?
That's a great question. So, for specific to industrial control systems, the SANS Institute has a lot of certifications and things like that specific for ICS, right? They have the GICSP, right, which goes with their 410 class, I believe is the number, the ICS 410. That's a very basic introduction to industrial control systems. You're going to learn things about like what a PLC is and how they work. They also have the ICS 515, which is doing incident response for OT environments. That's a great class. I hold that certification. That class was, written by my CEO, and he teaches that class. But I've taken that class. I've taken the certification. It's really impactful in my day-to-day life here. I would certainly think if somebody's going to be in the industrial control system field, that's a very valid certification to have. There is a new certification that I believe is coming out soon from CompTIA that's a little more entry level, like maybe more accessible to people that, because a lot of a lot of the SANS courses, while they're very good, they can be very expensive. And so there's cost prohibition there. And so the CompTIA certification is launching a new one called the OT Sec Plus. And that will be really interesting to watch and see how that goes. I'm hoping to be involved in that advisory board. I was talking to them earlier, and so it'd be really interesting. So I'll be able to have a follow up on that, in the next several months. But I think that's a certification to watch for this field that might be more immediately achievable as people then work up to some of those bigger certifications from the SANS Institute. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the GICSP. The grid is the one for the SANS 515. And then of course, like I use this I have a CISSP, which is a very IT thing to have. And it gives you the same language so that you have the same common lexicon of whether you're talking to IT and whether you're talking to OT, you're able to kind of bridge that risk language gap, making sure that you're able to speak to the C-suite and they can understand the risk. I think to me, that's the most important certification that I've had in my career that helped me kind of bridge the gaps. But it's not ICS specific. But it's very broad and allows me to kind of to talk to people of all levels and make sure I go the right way there. But yeah, and then of course any engineering training, on-site engineering training. Like I did systems training at a specific nuclear facility. It took like 2 years to go through that site-specific engineering training. So I guess it really depends if you're coming from a cyber background or if you're coming from an engineering background or if you're mixing the two, like, where are you looking to do? What are you trying to supplement? But those are all very good options, and of course, if anyone has any questions, they can message me, and I'd be happy to point them, to where I think they should go for their career.
Yes, definitely. Now, definitely, now we are going to dive into already the advice part. So, if you're advising someone early in their career in terms of ICS, where do you see most strength, especially with their field, as you know, in general? What do you lean towards?
Well, I'm a big fan of hands-on experience. And so if you're someone who's in your cybersecurity career and you're looking to get into ICS specific cybersecurity, I would definitely make sure that you understand the differences between IT and OT. Like, what are the differences in technology and processes and consequence? What are the differences here? You can get kits and play with them, whether they're the Click PLCs or Arduinos and things like that. Just get familiar with non-standard, like, IT technology. Understand what you're gonna, get into. Making sure you understand very common protocols like Modbus and OPC and things like that. And for me, if you're in your cybersecurity career and you're looking to get into ICS, that's that 410 class from Sansa, or that's a very good option to go to kind of get the basics of engineering. Now, if I was an engineer getting into cybersecurity, I would not do that class. I would immediately go to the 515, the more cyber aspects of it. So, yeah, I would just say as much hands-on as you can get with, whether it's, with an asset owner, or whether it's, on yourself building your own kind of OT lab. Like, you can get some of these PLCs and things like that for fairly reasonable, and there's all kinds of projects and things like that that you can do.
Yes. Lastly, parting shots from you. Is there any information you want to share with us, where they can find you and all that information? And
Oh, yeah, of course. I would say that another, just to elaborate on my last point, the Dragos puts on a capture the flag event every year. That's OT specific, capture the flag. That's a great opportunity to kind of dip your toes in and see what OT cybersecurity is all about, especially if you're a cybersecurity person or you like CTFs. So I would definitely take a look at the Dragos CTF. As for me, you can find me on LinkedIn. Definitely check out the emerging threats paper that I helped write with in collaboration with the Office for Nuclear Regulation. Uh, go to, check out Dragos and our webinars. We put out a lot of different content. Uh, yeah, I just, enjoyed the conversation.
yes, thank you for that. I've definitely added the white paper and one of the videos where you talk of the 5 controls in the show notes. So if someone wants to check it out, you can check it out from there. And also your website. So you can go and check out, definitely if you check out the video with Dr. Jacob, you can actually see the rest of the other videos. Other than that, thank you, Jacob, for coming on the show. It has been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I can't wait to check out your next videos.
Yes, I look forward to actually sharing it with you. Other than that, see you all in the next episode and be sure to subscribe. Have a good day.